Triangular Swerve and Indentured to Serve. I am, as always, your host, Christopher Paul Dugdale, MEDMA. We are Duncanville High School in these United States. And today is September 22nd, 2020. And on this date in history, in 1948, the Soviet Union put a blockade around Berlin. Now, the United States had a choice of either going in with our military, just giving up the city of Berlin, but instead they tried something different. They flew in all the supplies that Berlin needed. And so for the next 11 months, they would fly and sometimes take off and land every 30 seconds to get all the supplies over that were needed in Berlin to survive. So everyone have a great day and be glad you're not in Berlin. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's having a good day. This is a quick reminder to everyone to remember that your first test is coming up here next week. Okay? So next week on uh, that would be on the 28th. Okay. So the 28th is the day of your first test. So make sure that you're ready for that test. Okay. You'll have 48 hours, the 28th and the 29th. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started today. So mercantilism, a country's wealth was measured. This time period was also famous for what was called the triangular trade. Okay, this is a trade that took place between Europe, the Americas, and Africa. And by the Americas, I don't just mean North America; I also mean the Caribbean or West Indies. Now, if you remember, a large number of people, about 2 out of every 3 people that settled in the Americas, actually went to the Caribbean. And also, this is where a large number of the slaves that come to the Americas in European territories will go to the West Indies, mainly because the Native Americans died out and the white people there did not like to work. Okay, so basically what happened is you would have people that lived in the Americas, and they would the people in the Americas would have all types of raw materials. This could be furs, this could be whale oil, this could be lumber, this could be all types of, also leather, and then food sources that were either grown or raised. Okay, and they would take and sell these to England. Okay, England would go and they would trade normally weapons or, well, normally just weapons to Africa in exchange for slaves, and those slaves would be taken to the Americas, and the process would begin all over. Okay, now this is also a time period where you would think that concepts like slavery and the concentration of wealth in the hands of a few people wouldn't take place. Okay, the Enlightenment was a movement that started in Europe so that people should use reason and natural law to shape society. Basically, use the scientific method to fix society's problems. Okay, so if you can find the answer to science questions, why can't you solve societal problems the same way? Why are these people poor? Well, let's fix A, B, and C, and then nobody will have problems. Okay. They also believe that God set up predictable laws that let people shape events. So basically, there was still a belief in some type of God or supreme being, but that person, or not person, that entity would give you what you needed to be able to set up whatever world you wanted to create. Now, let's look at the difference between some of the regions of the United States. Okay, we have people in the okay, they're going to live 20 years longer than the people that live. Okay, so 10 years longer, the conditions are much better at the moment. Okay, so people will live over there with their entire family, and Chesapeake people with more money, like the Puritans, were the ones that went up to New England. Now, in addition to this, they also had a pretty low mortality rate. The average woman that lived in the New England area would get pregnant 10 times in her life, and then children would survive. The governor of Massachusetts was one of 27 children by the same mother, and my great 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 grandfather, he and his wife had 30 children that survived. They lost. I don't know if they like lost in war or how they lost, but they did lose two of their children. So, but they all lived in a one-room uh, log cabin. It was smaller than most of your classrooms. There was no bathroom, no kitchen. It was basically one big open room. And by big, I mean smaller than most of the classrooms in schools in Boston, okay? Particularly at the high school. So everyone lived in one room. You slept really close together during the winter for warmth, and then during the summer, sometimes the older kids would come to anyway. They could obviously force us to farm. Okay, so this farm is really and you're not going to be selling it. But in the south, the land was so rich that you could farm really large tracts of land and you could sell the excess you had. But in New England, you just couldn't do that. They were also doing a lot of fishing, whaling, and lumbering. Okay, they had town meetings because they lived off of farming and lived in smaller communities at the south where they were sometimes, you know, maybe a day from their closest neighbor. Uh, they actually had these town meetings and they would solve and discuss local issues and problems. And they made laws for themselves because they were far enough from England that, England kind of let them do what they wanted to, and this started a system that they would not want to give up. Now, if you remember up in New England, that a lot of them were ruled by Puritan communities. So they created something called the halfway covenant. Okay, so in a Puritan society, a church member could get their children partial membership to the church because they were active church children. And if the child was baptized as a child, they would have all the rights and privileges and voting rights of the town. Okay, now moving on, the Salem witch trials. Okay, so some girls in Salem, Massachusetts, said that other women bewitched them. Now, what does this look like? Basically, you could sit there and you could start chanting like Umba Gappa, Jack, Jack, Umba Gappa, Jack, Jack, Jack. And so they started chanting like, oh no, look, they're being bewitched. So what's going on, girls? Oh, they're casting a spell on you? Okay. Well, we have a simple way of solving this. Okay. Uh, we we can we can push you off the cliff, and if you fall to your death, then you were a Christian and you get to go to heaven. If you didn't, we're going to bring you back and hang you. Okay. Or one other thing we can do is we can put you in the water, and if you float, you're a witch. But if you sink to the bottom and you drown, you're obviously not a witch, and you get to go to heaven. They actually hung a total of 19 women, $2. They hung $2. Okay, and they pressed one woman. Now that doesn't mean they took an iron to her and like ironed her out flat. It just means that they put rocks on her until it crushed her and she died by gasping. Well, I guess gasping for air. And yeah. By the way, gasping for air not very pleasant. Sometime remind me, and I'll let about gasping for air and why it's bad. Basically, the governor stopped him because his wife was accused. He was like, "What? She's kind of a, but she's not a," and so that stopped everything. And good news for all the women that were hung or pressed. 20 years later, they were all exonerated, and it's like our bad. Sorry, you were killed. Now, life in the middle colonies. Okay, people in Chesapeake actually lived 10 years less than people in Europe. Okay, there were major problems with malaria and dysentery. Dysentery is basically when you die of diarrhea. Okay, so if you went to New England instead of the Chesapeake area, there's actually a 20-year life expectancy difference between those two regions. The population grew from immigration, but a large majority of people died on arrival. Okay, there were 6 times as many men as there were women, and generally most marriages ended because one of the people died in the first 7 years of marriage. So by the time you had children, both your parents might have been dead for as long as, well, in many cases within 14 years. So the last few years of your childhood you'd be raised by either a step either a step parent or abandoned on the street. But eventually, people gained immunity to these diseases, and they found a way to live in these harsher communities with bad conditions. Now, tobacco is one of the biggest cash crops in the South. These could be this could be grown on a lot of land, and people were willing to pay a lot of money for tobacco. In fact, people all over the world were paying money for tobacco. Think about this: tobacco was not really a big product until about 400 years ago. So that's not just people smoking; that's also people dipping. So people had great teeth back then. You know, you've seen people that smoke and dip; they always have the prettiest yellow and brown teeth. So attractive. Uh, so people tried to have families to provide the labor, but whenever they didn't, they found one of two things. One of them were indentured servants, and the other one was slaves. So, in the Chesapeake area, we're looking at a system of large farms or plantations. Okay, this creates social classes. Now, at the very top are the people that own the plantation. They're known as the planter elite. Then you have the poorer farmers, which are called the backcountry farmers. Okay, now so many of these really poor farmers from Europe would become indentured servants, and they would work for the planter elite in exchange for their voyage over to the Americas. So you would agree to work somewhere between 2 and 7 years, and they would bring you over here. You work off your debt, and later on you would get something from the person that paid for you to come over. Okay. Eventually, slaves would take these positions. Okay. And by the way, I know the way I said it made it sound like they were like, "Oh, I'd like to apply for this." It was never like that. Okay. Now, for everyone you brought over, you get 50 acres of land for anyone you brought over. Now, at one point, there were 100,000 people in Chesapeake that were indentured servants, or basically 3 out of every 4 people. And I bet you're wondering, what did a contract look like? And I have to say, I'm sorry. Like I can actually come up with a contract. I mean, what do you think I am? Contracts are up. Here's one of the contracts. Okay, it says I blank a blank. So I, Chris WDMA of Arlington, Texas, or Duncanville, Texas, do firmly oblige myself as a faithful and obedient servant in all things whatsoever to serve and dwell with blank. This would be the person that paid for me to come over that I've worked for the next 2 to 7 years, according to the laws and customs and orders for servants in Carolina. The said, and this is the person who paid for me to come over, providing for his servant all such necessaries in time of his or service, and at the expiration of the term, as the laws oblige masters to perform their service. So there's a place for you to serve as sign as a servant and as a master, and then a place only I can show you what the responsibilities were. I'm going to show you what the responsibilities are. So, indentured servants would serve from 2 to 7 years. Okay, most of the time it was less than 5. Now, what would affect you have in mind? You would have to serve. Well, here's a simple question, or not a simple question, but a simple answer. It depended on what you could do. The more skilled you were, the less time you had to work. Now, all you can do is farm, and most of your crops die. You're going to be there for 7 years. But if you are, say, a cobbler who makes shoes, or not to be racist, a blacksmith, okay, or you had some type of skilled position, then you might have a very short term. Okay. Now, what do you have to do? Well, first you have to obey your master. Okay. You get free passage to America. They would have to give you food, clothing, and shelter. And at the end of the service, they'd have to give you land, clothes, or tools or money. Okay. And if you didn't do things right, you could be whipped for punishment. And if you did something wrong, they could add service for breaking any type of law. Now the masters, okay, the servant has to obey you. Okay, you pay for the passage, you give them stuff, and you get 60 to 150 acres depending on which colony you were in the South. And if you whip a servant for no reason, you had to free them. And if they got sick, you had to take care of them. That doesn't mean you have to cure them, but you did have to do something to try and help prolong their life. So by 1780, so this is right after the American Revolution, there were fewer and fewer indentured servants. Okay, but slavery is going to fail because of the high mortality rate and the high cost of slaves. Okay, coastal African tribes would capture Africans and would normally trade them for weapons. Okay, now if you were a slave, how did you get your freedom? Well, depending on what it was, in some cases you might get it after 5 to 7 years, like in service. That was not always the case, but in some states they did have a system like that. Now, other people would be given their freedom by their masters, normally at their death. Some slaves would buy their own freedom. You know, if you buy someone for life and you want to get your money's worth out of them, you can't work them 7 days a week, 14 hours a day because you'll kill them. So generally what they would do is give them off 1 or 2 days a week. Some of the slaves would work during that time for money and save up money to buy their own freedom. Okay? Some of these slaves would gain freedom and own slaves of their own. And what was weird about the slave population in the Americas that wasn't true anywhere else was that the slave population grew for reproduction. Now, by 1870, and this is really the end of the time period where slaves were taken from Africa and brought to the Americas, a total of 12 million Africans had been brought over from Africa in a deadly voyage called the Middle Passage. Okay, of this 12 million, of the 12 million people, 1 out of every 3 slaves actually went to freedom. Okay, almost 1 out of every 3 slaves went to Brazil. 1 out of 6 of the slaves died at sea, and 1 out of every did I say 1 out of 6? Yeah, 1 out of every 8 went to Spanish colonies. So in total, 1 out of every 24 slaves ended up in North America or the United States today. In 1705, Virginia regulated slavery and made it a lifelong condition and reduced the rights of African Americans in the United States because, well, actually, that was in the United States in 1705. But they reduced the rights of all the African slaves. If you look at the picture on the top right, I know this is kind of looks like it's how a child would draw people on a boat, where they're all laying down. But the truth was, this is how you were shipped. Okay, you were put laying down, chained down to the ground, and most of the time you only had about 6 normally have planks above you with people above you. And you might spend anywhere from 6 months to 30 months inside this boat before you were taken over to the Caribbean, cleaned up and sold, or cleaned up and then shipped off to either North or South America where you'd be sold off. The fact that only one out of every six people died is a testament to the strength of the people that were forced to endure all of it. So, women who lived in the colonies at the time, they had no legal status and were not allowed to own anything. And that included their clothing. They had no legal rights to their children. They couldn't own property. The minute you were married, all of those things then fell underneath the husband. Okay. Single women were allowed to own property, file lawsuits, and run businesses. But as for married women had really no rights at all. So this brings us to the end of yet another day. I hope everyone's having a wonderful day. Kind of a depressing set of things to talk about today. I will make you this empty promise that tomorrow will be better. Oh yeah, I'm not meeting you tomorrow. So you know what? I will make tomorrow worse. So if everyone has a great day,